This is the Tuesday, February 9th, 2021 meeting of the Flemington Borough Planning Board. Virtual meeting is called pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act. Both adequate and electronic notice of this virtual meeting has been provided by way of publication in the Hunterdon County Democrat and Courier News newspapers on or about January 21st, 2021. In addition, notice of the meeting was posted on the door of the Borough of Flemington Municipal Building located at 38 Park Avenue and any handicap accessible entrances thereto, posted on the municipal website, provided to the municipal clerk and distributed to all persons, if any, requesting copies of same. This meeting is being recorded with both audio and video and may be rebroadcast. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Please rise for the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, Jeff, I got a text from Susan. She needs an invite from Eileen. She's having trouble logging in.
Okay, Eileen, please take care of that.
It's on the website too, in case she needs it. She can go right under the calendar.
And then we can promote her from attendee. That's not a problem.
Yeah, that's how I usually end up getting it.
She's in there as attendee.
She's there now? I got it. Okay, Eileen, could you please call the roll?
Unmute myself. Mayor Driver,
Here.
Mr. Long,
Here.
Mr. Campion is excused. He is at a quarterly meeting. Mr. Dashna,
Here.
Mrs. Engelhardt,
Here.
Mr. Cook,
Here.
Mr. Budney,
Here.
Mr. Hain,
Here.
Ms. Giffen,
Yes, here.
Mr. Hill.
Here.
Mr. Norton,
Here.
Mr. Levitt,
Here.
Ms. Weitzman,
Here.
Ms. Kaczynski,
Here,
Mr. Clerico.
Here.
Ms. McManus,
here.
and Mr. Troutman is excused.
Ms. Kaczynski, you want to start with conflicts?
Yes. So as we do at the beginning of every meeting, is there anyone this evening looking at the items on the agenda that feels that they have any personal, pecuniary, or other direct or indirect interest, or anything else that would otherwise preclude them from acting on any particular matter in an unbiased fashion? Hearing none.
Thank you. All right, item 1 on the agenda, period for public comments. Eileen, have we received anything?
No, as of 3 o'clock today, we did not receive anything in the public comments website, web or email, or on my planning board email. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the public who are here at the meeting, if you would like to speak for up to 3 minutes on a matter not currently in front of the board as an agenda item this evening, please utilize the raise hand feature. Seeing none, we're going to proceed to item 2 on the agenda, mayor comments. Mayor Driver.
I have none, thank you.
Item 3 on the agenda, council comments. Mr. Long.
Yeah, good evening. I only have one, and it's I went to my mail today in the Borough Hall, and I had just a little recognition for the census little subcommittee we had. That was Susan Engelhardt, Brian Budney, and Karen Giffen. I got this little, can't really see it that well, I guess, but just a thing from the Census Bureau saying, hey, good job, Flemington. You know, we were integral to the count for the 2020 count. So I just wanted to share that with you, little hooray for us. And that was it.
Thank you, Mr. Long. I see that Don Eckel is in the attendees. I'm going to allow Don to speak if he has anything from HPC.
Good evening. I just wanted to thank Jeff. We had a good meeting last Sunday and discussed some of the goals and objectives of the HPC as well as, some of the relevance to the planning board. I just appreciate your time there, Jeff, and look forward to the next time we get together. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Don. We are now on item 5 of the agenda. Excellent. Yes.
I'm sorry, Jeff,
Yes.
very quickly. I just want to make sure that Don stays on board when we discuss the master plan budget later.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, if Don, if you could stay around for when we get to chair items, subcommittee reports and chair items 9 and 10 on the agenda. Your hand is up. Do you need to say something else? You can speak if you wish. I did that.
Oh, no, I'm good and I'll stick around. Thanks.
Thanks, Don.
Excellent. Thank you. Item 5 on the agenda is approval of minutes from the January 26, 2021 regular meeting previously circulated by email. Do I have a motion and a second for the minutes?
So move, Hayne.
Second, Cook.
Are there any clarifications or corrections to the minutes or any discussion?
Yeah, there are a few. They're not substantive, but Eileen, if you could just take a look, there were just a few typographical errors. The ones that I found, like public comments, just combined as one word. Board members, but it was actually board member. So again, just a couple of things if you could just look, and I highlighted them, but we don't have to go through them now, but they're not substantive at all. They're just pure typographical or grammatical errors that I saw.
So Kara, we could approve them subject to Todd sending those to Eileen if we need to.
Correct.
Okay, are there any other discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Hayne,
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mayor Driver,
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Dashna,
Yes.
Mrs. Engelhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've already.
Yeah, that was, you can only count me once.
Mr. Budney,
Yes.
Ms. Giffen,
Yes.
and Mr. Hill.
Yes.
Thank you. I will make those changes. Thank you.
Thank you all. Item number 6 on the agenda, resolution 2021-06, public commenting policy for remote/electronic planning board meetings. That was previously circulated by email. And Kara, if you want to maybe just very quickly explain what we're doing here.
Yes, so the regulations from the TCA and the Department of Governmental Services and the New Jersey Administrative Code requires that all local bodies, local public bodies adopt a public commenting policy. This is a policy that was circulated and adopted by the borough. So in an effort to maintain continuity, we utilized a very similar approach, made some minor changes to it in order to adapt it to the planning board. And just one of the things that I will talk about in here, there's been some questions because the comment procedures, allowing for comments to be applied for in email and in writing is a little bit different than what the boards are used to in connection with the municipal land use law. There is no real guidance as to whether or not specifically there is a difference in how it should be applied to land use bodies. So the recommendations is for the comments to be applied and provided for in the same manner via email again and in writing. But you'll see that I did make a notation in there that the board should remember to give those comments where the individuals are not present before the board whatever weight it deserves, and basically to note that they're not here and that they cannot be subject to inquiry or any additional in-person comments. Of course, they have the right to appear. And then again, would be subject to any additional commentary or questions of the board. So other than that, it's basically the same as what the borough had adopted. And so it's before the board for any questions, comments, changes, and that's what the resolution is here for.
So if I could get a motion and a second on resolution 06.
Driver will move.
Hill second.
Okay, is there any discussion or questions or? Okay, seeing none, can we please call the roll?
Mayor Driver,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Dashna,
Yes.
Mrs. Engelhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mr. Budney,
Yes.
Mr. Hain,
Yes.
and Ms. Giffen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 7 on the agenda is the discussion item. I'm going to introduce it, and I'm going to promote, or I say allow to talk, Steve Grunberg, who is counsel. This is Pleasant Run Structures LLC, Block 18, Lot 12.03 in Raritan Township, Block 5, Lot 15 in Flemington Borough, 101 US Highway 31, the property that was probably most recently known as Garden Gate. I'm going to let Mr. Grunberg explain why we're talking about it.
Folks, before we get going, I just want to say I have a conflict with this, so I'm just going to step away from the conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve Gruenberg on behalf of Pleasant Run Structures LLC. This is a project that is being developed and it required use variance approval and minor site plan approval in Raritan Township. The entirety of the site is all in Raritan Township, except for a small portion along Main Street that is located along in the borough. There's no development in the borough. There's actually no development because all of the existing structures and existing impervious surfaces are remaining the same. So my client is currently operating under a temporary use permit to sell backyard play sets, backyard shed structures, and other similar items. We got our approval before Raritan Township, which was great. One of the conditions, because the property kind of lies both within the township and in the borough, was proof of submission to the borough of either site plan review or a letter of no interest to be provided. Since we're not doing anything in the borough, everything within the borough is actually, I believe, within a conservation easement, can't be disturbed. We're asking for a letter of no interest, which in my experience between Raritan Township and Flemington Borough is granted when there's this type of application. Happy to answer any questions that you might have, but it seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Mr. Clerico, who has had a chance to review it. Bob, if you could just, for the board, explain what your thoughts are.
Yeah, sure. It's pretty much what Steve just said. The portion of the site that's in the borough is basically from the stream over to the adjoining East Main Street access, and it's floodplain, it's wetlands, and it's whether there's a dedicated conservation easement there, I don't recall, but in any event, they're not doing anything in that portion of the property.
Okay, so the question before the board is whether or not we would want to see site plan, or whether or not the board would be so inclined to issue a letter of no interest. Kara, can you explain what that is legally, so for folks who may not understand, haven't seen one of these before?
Sure, absolutely. We've done a couple of them between Flemington and Raritan since I've been with the board. And basically, when you have a piece of property that is within two municipalities, both municipalities have jurisdiction over the proposed development. Each municipality applies its own zoning should it decide to take and keep that jurisdiction. In the alternative, a municipality can, by governmental body resolution, cede its jurisdiction, zoning jurisdiction, to the other town, or it can come before the board on a case-by-case basis for these letters of no interest, which again, a lot of times between Flemington and Raritan is what's taken place here in situations similar to this. So the board can, again, ask any questions or we would just need a motion for whatever type of action the board would take.
Are there questions? Yeah, Mayor, please.
Yes, hi, Steve. Can you tell me what the lighting is? Is it all night lighting? Is it dark sky lighting? It's a pretty big lot, and I know they've got a lot of property on there.
Yeah,
So I'm just
they're
kinda
actually
curious
not
about
lighting.
that.
What they're doing is they're going dawn to dusk. So they're not, they're maintaining the lighting that's been on site. They're not increasing any lighting at all.
Okay.
Other folks with questions, please.
We
Susan?
did provide a copy of the plans to the board as well that were submitted to Raritan Township showing what has been submitted to the board for approval and did receive approval.
Steve, really quickly, has the resolution been adopted by Raritan Township yet?
It has not, but once we got our approval, we wanted to jump on satisfying all the conditions as soon as possible.
Okay.
Susan had a question, I'm sorry.
I had a comment, not a question, so I don't know if this is the
Go ahead.
appropriate time to state.
This is discussion, go ahead. We don't.
Discussion, okay. Just number one, yes, I agree. We've done many of these before for the new members of the board. Not unusual because our borough overlaps a lot with Raritan, and I just wanted to go on record to say that I appreciate Raritan, remembering to reach out to us because we get these often, and once in a while that slips through the cracks. So I do appreciate them doing that. I'm surprised that Raritan doesn't have an outdoor sales ordinance, and I think that I just wanted to note for the record for our future endeavors in that maybe perhaps we should make sure we take a look at this issue when we review our own master plan, and hopefully Raritan will do the same when it's their turn to review their master plan. Just a little bit of encouragement to our neighbors.
I would second that if I could. Just so that you know, what happened here was we had the garden center there for years that had outdoor display. My client wanted to come in and display the sheds and the play sets, and it was interpreted that they needed a use variance under that circumstance. So whatever ordinances could be addressed both in Flemington and Raritan as appropriate to address those situations, that would be very much appreciated because it costs my client a lot of time and money to pursue this approval. And we do
Well, I
appreciate
encourage them to take a look at it, but we will do the same in our own due process.
Any
That's
other
great.
comments?
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Any other comments or questions? Do I have a motion?
So moved, Cook.
What are you?
Second,
Engelhardt
Budnick.
You have to,
seconds.
Todd, you need to say what you're moving.
We already said in the beginning that we were issuing a letter of no,
Well, that was what's being asked of us. We could say yes or no. We could do other things. So I just make sure I got this right. You're saying that we should issue a letter of no interest. That's what you're moving.
yes.
And there was a second from Mr. Budney. Okay. Is there any further discussion on that? Okay, Eileen, please call the roll.
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mr. Budney,
Yes.
Mayor Driver,
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Dashna,
Yes.
Mrs. Engelhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Haynes,
Yes.
Ms. Giffen,
Yes.
and Mr. Hill.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. It was good to see you all again, if not in person, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Mr.
Take care,
Gernberg.
Steve.
Take care.
Well,
Okay, we are up to item 8 on the agenda. And I see Beth has returned, thank you. Which was on the previously drafted agenda, the public hearing for Flemington Center Urban Renewal LLC, Block 22 lots 1 through 10, 11 through 14, Block 24 lots 1 through 3 and 24, Main Street, Bloomfield Avenue, and Spring Street, also known as Courthouse Square, also known as Union Hotel. Kara, can you explain for the board's understanding why we are not having the testimony this evening?
Absolutely. So with the new regulations and new virtual postings of application information on the website, as well as providing an opportunity for people to come and get hard copies, the materials need to be available on the website at least 10 days before. That's how the borough does it. That's how the board does it. And that would be the exact same way we would have done it with regard to hard copies. There were some pages of the civil engineering drawings that were not available online. And there was a prior version of the architectural drawings that were not on the website as well. So it was not due to any notice or publication requirements. Unfortunately, all of that was done properly, will be done again. For everyone's edification, just out of an abundance of caution. But again, that's why the applicant is not appearing tonight, just to make sure that everything is on the website at least 10 days prior. That application will now be pushed to the February 23rd agenda. Everything on that agenda, if the board agrees, will be just done in accordance with the current schedule. So that would be first, everything else would be behind it. And again, just so for anyone that's here tonight, even though the agenda referenced that there would be no testimony, no public hearing, there will be additional notice and publication of the February 23rd meeting, again, as there was initially for this evening.
Just to make sure everyone on the board, there's no questions here, right? We understand that this was very, very simply just an innocent mistake on what files got uploaded. And so out of an abundance of caution, we just want to make sure that everything is done by the book for all applications. Brian.
I do have a quick scheduling question. Maybe this is more for later in the agenda, but by my last notes, we have another application on the agenda.
Yes, we're gonna talk about that under next meeting. Yes, you are absolutely right, Brian, and we are going to get to that because and Karen and I spent some time talking that through. So we'll get to that later. Susan, please.
Just a clarification, this was not the and the accident was not actually caused by the borough, but it was the applicant's consultants that accidentally did this. Is that correct?
Yeah, and to their credit, they caught the error and they let us know.
Yes,
and I want to acknowledge that that they, on a very detailed and complicated set of drawings and submissions, they caught the mistake, and we do appreciate that everyone is trying to follow the letter of the law as strictly as possible and really trying to make sure that everything is done entirely 100% kosher. So I do want to acknowledge that and appreciate that they did catch that mistake.
Right, because those differences could have easily been missed.
Yeah.
So the fact that they came to us is great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The other piece that's relates to this application is we're going to, and I would imagine that this is as good a time as any. Kara was just going to spend a moment talking through for members of the board the kind of difference and nuance of a site plan application when we're dealing with a redevelopment area as opposed to kind of a normal straightforward site plan review process. There's no reason for anyone who might be who would otherwise need to recuse themselves to step away, that we're going to talk in generalities about that, because there will be other similar applications in the future. The borough has other areas already deemed in need of redevelopment with redevelopment plans in the works or approved. And so I think it would help everyone to understand how those are a little bit different than kind of how a normal review would happen. So I'm going to turn it over to Kara for a couple of minutes here.
Okay, yes, and I'll be brief because, to be honest, it's really not that difficult. Just to reiterate what Jeff said, we're not having any discussion with regard to any particular redevelopment area, any particular redevelopment plan or application. This is just on a global basis. And since we have the opportunity tonight now, as he says, as good a time as any to take care of it. From a statutory perspective, specifically, it's the citation for anyone that wants to look at it is 40A:12A-13. in a redevelopment area, all applications for redevelopment must be submitted to the planning board for review and approval. That review and approval is done in accordance with all of the provisions, procedures, and all of the other safeguards that are set forth in the municipal land use law. The only difference is the board now applies the parameters of the redevelopment plan. So the redevelopment plan now oversees and overtakes what the zoning of that area normally would. And it basically provides the zoning, it provides the development standards that any typical zoning ordinance would. So the same way that you would take a look at it in connection with what your ordinance provisions would be, you're now taking a look at it in accordance with what a redevelopment plan requirements are. The difference is your redevelopment ordinance, obviously depending upon the municipality, but usually does not go into as great detail with regards to things like streetscape or design standards or things of that nature. Actually, the borough's ordinances are very specific, so you're not too far into something like this, but the redevelopment plan is going to go into a great deal of specifics, again, depending on what the area is, with regard to what the board is reviewing and what the standards and the applicable development is. So, and that's really it. So and again, one of the other things to point out is there cannot be any use variances in connection with the redevelopment plan. There can be deviations, there can be waivers, there can be variances depending upon how the plan itself calls them out and what they allow. But the use has already been decided. So the applicant cannot come back to the board under a redevelopment area governing as a redeveloper and ask for a use variance in your typical redevelopment plan. So that's really it. So you take a look at the redevelopment plan, take a look at what the standards are, take a look at the plan that's submitted, compare the two, and look at it like you would any other site plan or waiver request or exception as may be permitted by that particular plan.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I just wanted to, since we had the space here on the agenda, just to make sure if anyone had any questions for Kara, I wanted to give an opportunity. Okay, good. So we'll move on to item 9, which is subcommittee reports. I had asked last month when we were kind of figuring out who was on which subcommittees, for those who were leading those subcommittees to be ready at this meeting to kind of give an update as to where things are. We're going to spend some time talking about master plan. I know Susan's got some detailed information there, but I'd like to hear from the other committees if there's anything that needs to be reported. So I'm going to ask Todd to sign review. Is there anything to report from sign review?
No new applications for 2021 under the current team. We did see our last sign application go up, which was the corner. Looks fantastic. And our last membership was filled by Robin Lapidus from the FCP. So now we have a full sign review committee.
Okay, and so that's on the record now. We've got that established. We had a committee that was working on website issues, if I remember correctly. Is there any report there, or is that kind of, because I know the borough's website now moved. It's now the current new website, right?
Now that the new website is up, I'll dust off the information we put together and see how it will fit in there.
Okay, good. Susan, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. When Brian and I put together that that list for the website, we knew that the borough was getting a new website. So it basically was said to us, hey, get your list together and then edit it after the website goes up. So that's why it's kind of been dead for a few months.
There's nothing wrong with that. I just want to, I just wanted to make sure. And then, am I missing a committee? There was the group that was working on parking, which we're going to roll into the larger master plan stuff. But Jim, do you have an update?
Unfortunately, I think snow and other things got in the way because two of my people are very heavily involved with the borough. I believe I'll be able to make contact with them if we stop shoveling snow in time for the next meeting. And also I will be in contact with Beth to see where and how we can fit into the master plan most easily.
Yep. Yeah, and Jay, I already Jay asked, Jay's going to connect also
Right.
with that as well. So I think that's in place.
Yeah,
So
because we had to coordinate also with the community partnership and so on, because we need like 4 people in the room at the same time.
yep, got it. Okay, and then that brings us to master plan. Unless I'm missing somebody. I think that was my list. So Susan, I'm turning it
Okay.
over to you.
Great, thanks, Jeff. So yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to talk about was the traffic portion of the master plan. So I'll get to that I'm just pulling up the proposal that Beth had sent last March. Everybody should have gotten a copy of this. It's dated March 5th of last year. I believe Hannah and Trent were sent new copies of that when we discussed it last week. If they haven't, I guess, Hannah and Trent, could you let me know if you have not received that proposal so you can look at it on your own, so you know what we're talking about? Just a up or down if if you could.
Exactly what I'd be searching for.
It's a proposal dated March 5th from KMA, Beth's consulting firm for master planning services. It is dated March 5th, 2020. So we would have had to send it to you separately in the last.
I did not
week or
send
two.
that, Susan, so I don't know
Okay.
if we're going to, or
All right, I will forward it over to
from
Trent
me.
and Hannah so that they know what we're talking about. Just try to follow along, I guess, since you don't have it in front of you. So I just wanted to, the proposal is several pages long. And I took a look at my notes from our meeting from last year when we discussed this proposal. Because the master plan is so important this year, we really want to make sure we do a really extensive job. That being said, we want to make sure that we are being responsible fiscally. I'm going to read the one paragraph from her intro because I think this is important. It kind of relates to everything that we're going to talk about. So basically, Beth's budget is described as such. She says, quote, the scope of work and budget presented here is intended to coordinate with the borough's related planning activities, the opportunity zone charrettes, the municipal self-assessment to be completed as part of plan endorsement, and the 21st Century Redevelopment Program grant, which, if received, will address planning the future of Liberty Village. Additionally, the circulation element will be prepared by the borough's traffic engineer. However, this proposal includes a small allocation of time for coordination and review of the circulation element. So that goes kind of hand in hand with what Jim was saying before. I guess my first more of a comment than a question is, we discussed, we being myself, Todd, the mayor, and Beth, discussed last year at our kind of early year planning meeting. We actually had a meeting in person, if we can remember that. I am not sure if that 21st Century Redevelopment Program grant was ever gone after. And number one, is this proposal affected by that if we don't have that grant?
I don't necessarily think so. I mean, I think that was a question for me, right?
Yeah, Beth.
Okay,
Yeah, I
sorry,
guess
thought
it's for
somebody started
Beth,
to
but I
interrupt.
think the mayor may have some comments as well. But go ahead, Beth,
Okay,
first.
so I don't think it needs to be.
Okay.
I sort of, I wrote that proposal and I continue to look at this project as something that's cost constrained, frankly, like most projects are. And so there's going to have to be some right sizing to the project, to the available budget. So, but that said, I don't see any reason why future development of Liberty Village can't be explored in this master plan as part of the land use element. I mean, yes, we would have been able to take it a step farther if there had been perhaps some of the groundwork laid or potential concept planning done as part of a grant that was received, but not receiving that grant, I don't think that endangers my ability to fully address the site in the master plan.
Mayor, you were going to jump in?
Mayor?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so no, the borough didn't apply for that. I do know, Jeff, I sent you some other grant information recently that could pay for maybe a tiny part of the master plan, but
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
I think I know as I was going through, looking through my notes, I actually found some notes saying, ask Beth about this. And so I think that was also right at the beginning of the pandemic. So I think that got lost in the shuffle last year. I wasn't sure if a lot of grant applications were, deadlines were extended and stuff. So I didn't know if that was the case with that particular grant or not. But it sounds like it won't affect the costs that are quoted in this proposal. So I'll move on unless anybody else has anything else to say about that. Okay. Good. All right. Okay. So the first two sections are pretty straightforward and frankly, the meat of her proposal. And I think if I remember right, Todd and I really fought hard for a $17,000 budget the last time we did a update to the master plan. And that was just a re-exam. That wasn't a full master plan review like that was, like this is. The first two line items in and of itself are $16,500. Goals and objectives is $1,500. And the land use plan itself, which is the biggest chunk of her budget, is $15,000. So that makes sense to me, just from a line items. If we did a re-exam for 17, and this is a full master plan update, those two big line items are the biggest chunk. Frankly, the goals and objectives for 1,500 is actually written last, even though it's first in the proposal, because she takes everything that I don't want to speak for you, Beth, but I want to put this in layman's terms of what a master plan is. So I did no offense.
Go ahead.
But basically, she's going to take all the information that she's collected from all of us, as well as all other people involved in getting this master plan information together, putting it together, and essentially the goals and objectives is, like I said, written last. The land use plan is like I said, the biggest meat and the biggest bulk of her work. So that's not where my notes showed where I thought we could save some money. And again, this is stuff that we discussed last March. So I'm just basically taking my notes from our discussion of last March on this.
Let me just also add that according to New Jersey law, what you have to have in a master plan is a land use element, housing element, and now impact of climate change is now part of that. And we'll get to that later. But there are certain things that you must put into a plan by law, and then there's the stuff that would be nice to add.
Right.
The niceties, and I think that's where we're going with that.
Right, and the niceties is where I think we can save a lot of money based on our own expertise within the borough and on this board in particular. So that's where my next comments come in. Okay, so that's the bulk of her proposal for the base. Then it breaks down into optional master plan elements. The number one item is circulation plan. She has $1,000 line item on this, but this particular item is the item that Jim was just talking about that needs to be coordinated with Jay. So we do not have a separate proposal from Jay for this, for coordinating this effort. So I think we need to get that from him. So
and I'm going to ask if Susan and Jim, if you could ask Jay that question directly, and I mean like tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because we are scheduled February 18th for the budget hearing. And I know that's not the final budget, but I'd like to be able, when Jeremy is speaking about planning board at that work session on that Thursday night, that we have all of the information.
Exactly. And this is going to be an issue for about 3 of my line items where where there's Beth's budget, but then there's also a concern I have that we might need to make sure we're including a small amount for another consultant's budget as well.
Sorry, Tim, did you have a question there?
No, not a question, was the fact that the work that we were able to accomplish a little bit last year was actually Mike, myself, and Jay to kind of go around the town and take a look at things. So he could prepare a budget, so he'd get an idea of where we were going. And he was in the process when it pretty much got shut down by the pandemic. So
Yep.
I think he's halfway there already. I'll email him tonight as soon as we get off and ask him to get a hold of me and see if we can work it out with Beth about the details of
That's
that
great.
proposal.
Yeah, and just copy Susan on that since she's kind of leading this committee work, so.
Ah,
That's
She'll know
exactly
about
what
it.
I was going to ask. I'm sorry, I can't see everybody with my notes up on one screen. I only can see like half the gallery. So I'm sorry if I'm talked over you, Jay. Talked over you, Jim.
no, it's no problem.
Okay. So the circulation plan for $1,000 for Beth to coordinate that effort between Jay and KMA, I think is certainly reasonable. Again, she's going to have to still write this whole thing. So there's hours. Each line item that I'm talking about basically is a section of text that she's going to have to write, a whole essay, whether it's pages or a paragraph, depends on how extensive the work is on that line item. So each line item cost that I'm talking about is essentially a section of verbiage that she needs to write. Okay, utility service plan. This is the one where, another one where I think we may need to pull Clerico in on this. And I'm not sure, and of course, the borough representatives from the Department of Public Work are also always involved in this. I mean, we've done this. This is my fourth, I think, master plan as a board member being involved with, and the Department of Public Works has obviously always consulted and involved in this section of the utility plan service plan narrative. But Beth is going to have to take the information from Clerico, from the Department of Public Works, and write this all together.
There's also been some work done, just to throw this out, there's also been some work done in relation to other projects in and around town. Like there's been some research done by the borough engineer and other folks regarding infrastructure costs around other big projects in town. So some of this work has been done relatively recently and should be somewhat easier to roll into what we've got now in terms of things like capacity and, the hydrologist and water and yada, yada, yada. So I think
I can specifically think of the Agway site.
And Susan, I'd be glad to participate, but I think it's really more geared to the borough engineer working with, Public Works, because as Jeff has said, I understand there's been a lot of that going on. If they need input from me on anything, I'd be happy to participate. But
Okay, that sounds great. Beth can call you for anything that she needs. I think the cost of the $5,000 seemed a little bit high to me. I don't know if Beth can do any better on that particular number or not.
On the utility plan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have, it's not, I'm not
We're
gonna
not
put
doing
you
this
on the
until
spot right now, Beth.
So,
I
yeah,
just
so
need you
let
to
me
take a
just
look at it and get back to me.
So I will, but so I'll do that. But one thing that just as a heads up, part of what I'm trying to do is protect against the things that I really don't know as part of this. So if folks give me a little bit of time, what I can do is try to gather some of the available information to assess what's available versus what needs to be done and how much review time it'll be necessary. So let me make a note, give me a little bit of time to gather up that information and get back to you.
Or possibly we do a not to exceed number, and for that particular line items, if that's one that you are not sure exactly how much work is involved because of what the borough's already invested with other consultants. I think that one in particular might be a good one to do a NTE line item on. Just a suggestion. And that way you're covered in case it does take a lot more longer, and we can still budget it properly
Susan,
without worrying about that.
Before we get down into that level of detail, I know we have to get to a number for the budget for the borough, but it'll be more useful if we go through the items, not necessarily about the dollars and cents per se, but more of like, what do we need in it and what are things that we may be willing to cut out on? Because we're at the end of it, we're going to get an allocation from the borough budget of X dollars, and we can figure out later where to move things around to to figure out what, leveraging what's been done and what's not been done.
Okay,
I'd rather us not spend too much time on, that level of detail tonight. We
Got
kind of, I need to have an order of magnitude so we know what the ask is.
got it. Okay, let me go through the rest of them then. And honestly, those first two were a little more down in the weeds anyway. I think I can rush through the rest of them a little more quicker. They're a little more straightforward. And frankly, the rest of these are going to be a yay or nay. Hey, are you willing to write this? Are you willing, as opposed to Beth to save some money. So I think we can, move forward a little more quicker from here. So the next item is the community. The next two items are ones that frankly, I think we could write ourselves. But what I would like to do is to have Beth still give us a budget to review and coordinate all of the narratives, the community facilities plan and the recreation plan. We have, I think, 2 council members, if I'm not mistaken, that are really very active with the recreation elements and facilities in the borough right now. And that's something that council's looking at in details. And the community facilities plan, frankly, we did a really good job last time in 2015, kind of documenting all of those. And I think taking the last element and then adding to it. I mean, I'm willing to write that. But I would want Beth to be the final kind of script on that.
Editor.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also I would typically include a map for each of those.
Oh, okay.
The master plan is going to include a lot of mapping, so it's not as if the community facilities map requires me starting from scratch about trying to lay out the borough, but
Exactly.
but there's going to be some time associated with it. So I appreciate that the borough. So one, if the borough wants to handle the mapping itself, that's fine. Just let me know. But assuming
No.
that's okay. Just checking. But yeah, I'm happy to review what was written, provide some editing, try to format it just so it looks like, sounds like, looks like the rest of the master plan, and put a map in there. And I'm happy to work with the borough on that item, for the sake of cost,
Okay.
or any of the other elements.
All right. The economic development plan for 6,500, that one I definitely think Beth should take 100% of. I know that Jeff's chomping at the bit right now because that's something he could do.
I want to write it.
But I know he doesn't want to write it. And frankly, Beth is intimately familiar with the current projects that are going on right now that have changed since 2015. So I think this is something because it's related to housing, and honestly, this one is an important one. It's kind of like up there with the housing element at the $15,000 line item at the beginning.
The other thing, honestly, is that there will be certainly some level of coordination with county economic development in terms of information and stuff.
Yes.
Done there.
Yes.
And there was also a lot that was written up as part of the OZ program a year and a half ago. So like, there's a lot of that stuff that is in good shape, but obviously needs to get updated.
Yeah, actually, all the work that Beth did last year, and we all did at the Opportunity Zone. Was the last? I'm sorry. 2019. We all put 2020 kind of out of our minds, right? For the Opportunity Zone Summit, all that work that the SCP did and that Beth did in order to prepare for that event, that goes into this element. And I think that's going to be a really great improvement from the 2014 plan and the 2015 re-exam. So that one's, I think that's worth the 6,500 for sure. Number 6 is the item that I wanted to make sure that Don stuck around for, obviously, for obvious reasons, the historic preservation plan. We did a lot of work on this last year. The whole map was already updated. So does that $4,500 reflect that? And do we need to bring Haction at all for this? So I guess that's where I want the discussion to be in regards to this line item.
So one, I don't think that the proposal reflects the map. That's more recent than this.
Yeah.
know that there's any need to reproduce the map, given that it's just recently been adopted, unless there's some changes that become, that are needed become evident between now and then. I definitely think that John Hash should be involved. I'm happy to write it, but it doesn't strike me as a good idea to have one person write a historic preservation plan and not have the borough's appointed historic preservation architect review it.
Okay, so I
It's
think.
sort of along the lines of coordinating with the circulation element and the utility element, things like that, where it's certainly, you know, typical for a planner to author it, but it requires some coordination from allied professions.
So I think what I propose on this one is that the budget number stays the same, but Hatch's number comes out of that.
Yeah.
If that sounds reasonable to everybody. I don't know how, and of course, Don and his team have to be involved with this part of the master plan, and that goes without saying. So I wanted him here for that as well, to understand that he will have to make sure that he coordinates with his team on writing and editing this section after Beth does the first pass. She's going to want their input.
Don, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to know what the figure is going to be in terms of how much is coming out, or.
I'm sorry. I guess it's that line item is $4,500.
Because I never got the original proposal, so 4,500?
Well,
Yeah.
But that's, you know, it's, some of that is Hatch's time and some of that is Kyle McManus. Essentially what we're looking for is to build on what's been done over the last couple of years with HPC, utilize the updated map, utilize some of the other, there's a lot of archival work that was done as part of the map update project over the last couple of years. And that stuff lends itself really well into the historic preservation element. And so it would be more of kind of coordinating with the work that HPC has been doing. Y'all did a tremendous amount of work in documenting like all of these properties when you were considering changing the boundaries and things to list or to change the designation of it. And like all of that stuff rolls into this plan element. So that's where there's a coordination piece. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no,
You know
absolutely.
what, Don, it might help if I just read this one little sentence to give you an idea of what the scope of work will be for the HCP. It says, I'll just read half of it. It says, this element will be particularly useful at this time as it will facilitate evaluation of the impacts of the recently amended HPC ordinance, the HPC's participation in the certified local government program, and the HPC recommended changes to the boundaries of the historic district map. So 2 of those 3 things are completed essentially. And the third is in the works. This element will be needed, will need to be coordinated with HPC and its professionals, and assumes mapping and analysis of individual properties to be conducted by the HPC, which again, you've already essentially done. So I guess we just need to make sure that, I think I would recommend that Beth and Hatch coordinate this as far as breaking up the finances between the 2 of them. Perhaps it's even a subcontract between Beth and Hatch.
That's
I don't
usually
know.
how these things are done. I mean, Beth,
Exactly.
Yeah, that's fine. I absolutely agree with the approach, and certainly with CLG. What's the time frame that we'd be looking to do this review?
This is going to be, assuming budgets go through and everything happens, and given what we know is kind of on the calendar, this is going to be a spring, summer-ish project. Betsy, please.
Yeah, I just want to point out, so the budget for a master plan actually does not come out of the general fund. It actually is kind of an odd what they call an emergency fund, because it is a unfunded state mandated item that we have to do. So it's actually borrowed. So you give us the number, council approves a resolution to borrow the money as an emergency expenditure. So it's not a line item, so to speak. So when you say budget approved, it's not really in the general fund budget.
Thank you for clarifying that. In terms of when we would do this, we were thinking spring, summer for a lot of this work because of what applications that we know already on the calendar, applications that we think are coming on the calendar, Liberty Village, Liberty Village area need report that's still pending. There's a few things coming. So Don, that's kind of the timeline we're thinking.
Okay, that's great. Because the CLG, you know, as we spoke a couple of weeks ago, we're really moving forward with getting the draft out there and the bylaws. So hopefully this will coordinate very nicely to make sure everything aligns appropriately, so we're not having to go back and amend a master plan element because of a prerequisite or of CLG, for instance. So this looks like it's great timing. So I guess from what I understand from the mayor, this is not coming out of the general line item budget for HPC then?
No, this is not an HPC expense. This is a standalone expenditure that the borough has to do its master plan, and it's not coming out of the HPC budget. No, this is separate. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, Susan, what else? What other sections do we have?
I just want to piggyback on what the mayor and you just said, while we have the chance, especially for the benefit of Trent and Hannah. This master plan, this is what we do. The only important thing that the planning board owns is the master plan. This is our baby, and it is really important that it's done right every 4 years or every 5 years. And the mayor has mentioned that before about the line item. So thanks for reminding us about that, because I do remember you saying that before, Mayor. But it is really important to understand that the master plan is a guideline. It is not the law. It is not the rules. It's basically a smoke signal that gets sent out to the rest of the, well, yeah, I know, I see you, Jeff, you're arguing, well, yes, it is the law, it is the rules. But it is also a smoke signal of that is sent out to potential developers to say, hey, this is what we have in mind for this area. This is what we have in mind for the borough. These are our long-term goals. And hopefully you as a developer will be able to help us meet those goals. So it's kind of like the first impression that the borough makes on people that are interested in investing in the town. So that's why it's important, or one of the reasons why it's important.
Okay.
But yes, it is all about the law for Jeff.
Well, no. The comprehensive plan is the community's statement of where we are right now, what our vision is for the future, and a path to get there. It doesn't have, it needs ordinances that go with it in order to give it the force of law, which is the next part of it. But you can't write the ordinances until you have the master plan.
Right. This is basically our recommendations to the council saying, hey, you know, maybe it would be a good idea to have an ordinance for this or for that. And we as the planning board can also help write those ordinances and send those up to the council as recommendations in the future. But before we can do that, we have to write the master plan.
All right, let's keep
going. Okay.
Please.
Recycling plan is 2,500. Frankly, it seems like a pretty mundane line item, but for this, it's actually going to be very important because we have a lot of housing coming into the borough, both for Agway and for Union Hotel and perhaps others. So honestly, I think the recycling plan element is important for that reason, based on her description that she puts in here. The educational facilities element, frankly, I can do this one myself. I've written probably 40 long-range facility plans for school districts all over the state. And this one's a no-brainer for me. I would like to have some sort of financial line item that Beth throws in there to coordinate the verbiage of it. But this one's a matter of taking the long-range facility plans that have just been issued by the high school, as well as the K-8 district, and incorporating those into this element. It's just happens to be my expertise. So I'm happy to do that. It's only $3,000, but every little bit I think helps. Conservation plan. This one, what do I have on here? This one I also have, Beth will probably have to coordinate with the borough engineers on, but it's $6,000. This one's a lot of work, especially with all of the issues related to rivers of late and how specifically the South Branch is, and you know, the whole issue with redesignating the river and how that will affect us from a development standpoint. I think the mayor's waving her hand.
Yes, I just want to add in that the borough engineer right now is working on off of model legislation from New Jersey Future for the stormwater management stuff that ties in with that as well.
So do
I
you
hope
think we
that-
could save some money by utilizing some of the work that they're doing now into this line item? Because it is a
To
biggie.
be able to, so the state's requiring us to have a stormwater management plan ordinance in place by the end of March, so that's being worked on right now. You guys should have it in March. I mean, we may miss the deadline, but hopefully by not more than 30 days. And we're taking it right off the model legislation that was written by New Jersey Future. You know, I trust the folks who work with New Jersey Future to produce good stuff. It looks like really good legislation, really good ordinance model legislation.
So I recommend for this line item that Beth reach out to the engineer, see what she can skim off of this line item particular so it can be the work that's being done already, but in the borough can be reused. And hopefully we can bring that down a little bit.
Am I wrong? But we've had to have a stormwater management plan in place before, though, haven't we? I mean, it's been, Bob, I remember this from years ago.
When you did the initial regulation, you had to go, it's part of your land use ordinance, so you had to do the component that's part of your master plan.
Right.
And I'm not exactly sure what the mayor just said about what the borough's working on, but what you're readopting by March is the ordinance, the stormwater control ordinance, and apparently you're going to be following the template, which is great. You may want to check though back with Rob. You may need to also be updating the master plan component of the stormwater. I think you're supposed to do that every 6 years or whenever you re-examine the master plan. So I'm not exactly sure for the borough what would be involved with that, but you maybe just double check to make sure that if you're going through this process with the master plan, that if there is something you need to do with stormwater, do it as part of this.
Well, if the ordinance is already being essentially updated with this exercise that the borough is doing now, isn't that any type of recommendations we have relating to this would be kind of null and void? No,
except that's not how the state law is written.
Okay.
Yeah. You're raising a good question there. It's been raised in a lot of communities, but the borough's working under a deadline for the ordinance.
It seems kind of,
Don't forget, it's also going to be documenting what existing conditions are as well as recommendations. So that's
well, she'll be documenting what work the borough has done. So that will be in this element. Okay. So that's 6,000. Beth, if you can reach out to the engineer and see what work you'll already have done that we might be able to save money on that particular line item, but I know there's still a lot of work involved in that line item. So I expect that. Green buildings and environmental sustainability plan. This one in particular, obviously, you'll need to coordinate with Karen and Trent. Trent is on the Enviro committee as well, right?
Yeah.
Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So definitely coordinating with Karen and Trent on this particular line item. So as far as writing it, I would expect Karen and Trent to be, involved in the back and forth of your drafts. And that line item is 6,000. And again, you may need to, that one in particular also relates a lot to the engineering department. So I'd ask you to make sure
didn't we have a prior sustainability element that spoke about this stuff, and you're talking about pulling this out separately. Is there a reason why? I mean, Beth, so this is, so you're talking about a green building, as opposed to, I mean, are we just renaming what was once the sustainability element, or?
The sustainability element is like the layman's term for the green building and environmental sustainability master plan elements.
It's the same thing.
It's one of the same. One is a mouthful.
Okay.
It's actually titled Green Buildings and Environmental Sustainability Plan.
Yeah.
Thank
you. So you got the word sustainability in there. Obviously Brian And I also have a background in this, so we can certainly be of assistance in and helping with the drafts and the edits back and forth. So I'll ask Beth to keep that in mind for the four of us, particularly for this particular item. And also I think I mentioned last time, the Agway project in particular, the development agreement that's being done has a really nice sustainable element to it. And I'd like to make sure that in this particular line item that there's a recommendation to the borough to incorporate some of the items that we're putting into the redevelopment agreement on that particular site be placed on development across the borough. Really low hanging fruit stuff that most people are doing anyway, but when it's in writing, they have to do it as opposed to it being optional. So that's what I'd like to see come out of this part of the master plan element. So there's a lot of work to be done for that $6,000.
Yeah, and I had a question to
make sure she's
piggyback.
coordinating with the engineer
Brian,
on that.
please.
Yeah, I had a question to piggyback on that. As Jeff mentioned earlier, there was a new I guess master plan. There was a new bill passed about within the past week or two that any towns doing master plan reevaluations need to have a language in there which accounts for climate change, your project impacts on climate change. And I haven't read the full text of that. And I'm not sure if Beth has read through that yet either.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if those requirements should be kind of addressed in the sustainability section we were just
Well,
talking about.
it's more than the sustainability section. And so
Okay.
when the law got, when the governor signed the law, I sent a note to Susan and to Beth to make sure that this was part of master plan. Kara got something out of kind of from the lawyer's side and shared it with us yesterday. It's more than, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's more than just like having a standalone section. It literally is like, you've got to deal with potential impacts of climate change throughout what you're looking at in your master plan. So it could be done in a sustainability element for sure. But like, that's not the only way to do it, is how, as I read it. I don't know if I'm getting it right though.
I read the same thing when you sent it to me, and my interpretation of that was that the verbiage of that should be sprinkled throughout all of the elements, was what I read when you sent that to us.
Beth, what have you been seeing?
So when I see this, I think what it's hold on, let me just double check one thing. Yeah, so it's included in the land use the land use element part of the municipal land use law. And so for those of you that haven't read it, what it essentially requires is that the municipalities element have an assessment of what the climate change impacts are on the town, including things like sea level rise, flooding, heat, drought, increase in temperatures, and also what strategy. So what are the impacts on the municipality? What are the vulnerabilities in the municipality with a critical eye to infrastructure, roads, sewer treatment plants, et cetera? And then what are the strategies that the town can and should take to mitigate those impacts? So it sort of reads like something that would be included in the green buildings and environmental sustainability plan element, but it's specific in the land use element. And if I don't know the background on this, but if I had to guess, it's because the land use element is actually a required element of the master plan. And so this forces a town to, if it wants to do a master plan, if it wants to keep its zoning essentially, to have this consideration. Whereas the sustainability element is just, it's voluntary. And I don't think even half the municipalities have adopted that. That's just my estimate. So, so it requires it in the land use element. But that said, a municipality that's doing multiple elements like Flemington is considering, I think that the best way to handle this is to concentrate the discussion in the land use element just for municipal land use law consistency, but then yes, address it in all of the elements, obviously the sustainability element. But if you think about the circulation element, this should be a consideration there as well, because we've got to consider critical infrastructure, and part of that is actually evacuation routes. I'm not sure how much that affects Flemington, frankly. You're certainly not a shore community, but it makes sense that you would address the bulk of it in the land use element as per the requirement, but then address all of the the related aspects of that discussion in the applicable elements as well to try to tie it together.
Yeah, I mean, this literally came out like a week ago, so we're all still learning. So it's we'll figure it out as we go along. Let's
I
move.
guess my question
Yeah.
related to, for Beth on that would be that doesn't affect the proposal that you previously sent.
It doesn't have to.
Mhm.
If we're in budget sensitive times, it doesn't have to. You know, I
Okay, we
can sort of,
appreciate
and
that.
frankly, it would be different if unless there's something I'm not thinking of. Flemington is not a particularly vulnerable community. I can't say there's no impacts of climate change here, obviously, but you know, it's not like we have substantial tidal flooding that needs to be contended with, something along those lines. So I do think it's something that could be fit in there. I have to, you know, I think it can be fit in there if we have, if we're sensitive about budget, yes. And I think the borough is, so.
We always are. Okay, so that concludes essentially the optional line items in her proposal. The rest of the proposal is standard line items that are essentially required. The public input session, because we have the opportunity zone public feedback, we purposely only put in one stakeholder input session in here because we've gotten all this great feedback from the public on the opportunity zone. So we're saving a little money there naturally. The survey, meaning basically when she has to go out and interview and survey and interview stakeholders as well as survey physically out there on site. That's 2,500, and stakeholder meetings. She has in her schedule essentially, let's see, 8 subcommittee meetings, 2 draft plan meetings, and the public hearing. So all those are line item meetings for 7,500. So essentially, in the end, obviously, there's a couple things that we asked her to take another look at. In the end, we've got, I don't see the total here. I see it all summarized. I can do math really quick in my head. That's not a good idea. But the only item that doesn't have a line item on it is the website, where she suggests that we perhaps set up a website for feedback. Because we've just created this new website, you know, for the borough, I think we can actually put that needed feedback on that website and not have to necessarily have Beth create a separate website. But that is something that I think we as a group need to discuss.
We also
tonight
have
as
all
well.
of this stuff from the opportunity zone. I mean,
Exactly.
we have a ton of that digital feedback. So
Exactly. We have a lot of it already.
We've already kind of done this. And I
Mhm.
think that anyone who is willing and interested in getting online and providing feedback has really availed themselves of those opportunities.
Exactly.
So it's not something I think we have to.
When I say put it on our website, I mean, you know, obviously we vote on this, so we have to this document, once it's finalized, has to be able to be reviewed by the public, and comments are given, and we all discuss this at a future meeting. So as far as feedback goes, having it accessible like we have in the past. We had it at the library, we had it at town hall, and we had it on our website for people to take a look at and review and then able to comment on.
Yep.
So I don't necessarily think we need a website separate based on our experience with the opportunity zone, but that is the one line item that she doesn't have a specific dollar amount assigned.
Susan, I think that, you know, before we did the opportunity zone involvement from a digital perspective with the public, I think it was Kara who brought another municipality that had set up a website. Maybe it was Westfield. I forget. You're on mute, Kara.
Yeah, I remember bringing something in from Westfield.
Yeah, and I think it was just, I think it was great because it really forced public participation in something that usually the public doesn't participate in. That being said, I think as long as we publicize and have some PR effort to say we're utilizing all of the great information we got from the Opportunity Zone, I think we can kill two birds with one stone there. I agree. It was just, I think last time, you know, if you were to ask most members of our Flemington Borough, A, what is a master plan? And B, have you ever participated in one? I think you get pretty much no. So I just love the idea of public participation, however we can get it. But I think it's just, how do we have our cake and eat it too, so to speak?
Well, here's the thing, we've been doing engagement in some level for the past several years anyway, and I think that we've got enough. There is a certain level of fatigue, you know, and you keep hearing the same voices over and over again. And so it's okay. I think we're well established for what we need to do. So there's a few things here then, Susan, that we were going to get some refinement from Beth. There were some questions about the engineer, traffic. There were some questions about DPW. There's some stuff here. What I'm asking for is there anybody else on the board here who's got other questions about the kind of scope of what we're talking about in terms of of what we want to basically start working on?
Does the, Beth, here's a question for you, because it was written pre-COVID. Do items number 16 and 17 have any change in scope if it was all virtual? That's namely the stakeholder, namely the meetings.
Yeah, I was just looking. No, not really, because in general, I don't do a lot of charging for travel time for municipalities, so.
Okay, I was just curious. I thought it may be more if it's all digital, but.
No,
okay.
not at all. No,
Okay.
everybody, clients are making out in during COVID as far as this goes with travel time being eliminated.
Thank you.
What I suggest is that I just follow up tomorrow with the open issues and then give you a final budget, Jeff, by Thursday morning.
Yeah, all in, Susan, this was 75 grand as
Yes.
listed. Whether or not you replace things out from Jay's perspective, or utilize DPW, or you know, you write some things yourself. But again, all in, as stated, it was 75 grand.
So what we're going to need is some updated information, and we are going, you know, and Jeremy and I spoke about this. The mayor's right. This is a separate. It's not part of the regular budget, but it is. But because the fact is that the borough will have to issue a bond. It needs to be talked about now, because the borough is going to weigh all of the things that the borough has to spend money on, and how much bond is issued, how much debt, because of things like road projects and other sewer projects and all the rest of it, right? So the council's going to have to make a decision on, looking at all of it together, even though this thing does stand on its own and it's not rolled into the normal stuff. It's still part of the larger question of taxes, right? So the council is going to certainly is not going to be happy if we come back with a $70,000 ask after they've done all of the hard work on figuring out priorities of where to spend money, which is why I'm kind of pushing this to be done now. So just out of fairness, that we have the best shot of making the case for what we need to get done. Right. So,
right.
So it sounds like we've got we know what we need to do. And we've spent a bunch of time on this. I want to make sure, I want to move on to other items on the agenda tonight.
I appreciate everybody's time. I just want to make sure that everybody understood it, because we did go through it in detail last year, but it was almost a year ago.
Yeah.
So I want everybody to understand how important it is. And there's not a lot of money to shave off of here. I think that was what I wanted to, kind of the summary of my report is, I don't see a lot of opportunity to save a huge amount, but we certainly can be responsible and shave things off that we have the ability to do as professionals ourselves.
Okay. Thank you, Susan, for the work on this. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's move on to chair items. we're up to that point on the agenda. I do have, we do need to talk about the next couple of meetings. But the other thing I wanted to mention, and it's, I'm gonna have Kara, you can weigh in too when I mention it, but we talked briefly at the last meeting about setting, and was kind of in process. And I wanted to give folks an update about digital access to files and how we're handling all of this work, because we spent some time over the last couple of weeks, some emails, lots of discussion. Karen and I spent some time on the phone with this, trying to get all this worked out, because essentially, not to say it like this, but there's New Jersey state law, there's municipal land use law, there's Flemington Borough ordinances, there's a governor's executive order dealing with the emergency, and then there's like a lot of questions that are still not exactly clear exactly what the letter of the law may exactly say. So we're all trying to operate in good faith here. We're all trying to do this as best we can. So so not only do we have a system now set up where all applicants who are submitting their materials for a hearing will have a place to be on the website, right? So any member of the public, any board or commission, anybody can go and review those materials just like they could if we were face to face, and they could walk into Borough Hall and look at the plans. We're trying to draw that line as close as possible. The other things that we've been able to do, and Kara can talk more detail about this, but we are providing instructions to all applicants, fairly detailed instructions to all applicants, not only about how their notice for hearings should look, given the rules about Zoom meetings and things like that, but also things like the deadlines as to when they've got to get their materials to us so that they can post it in a timely way, and that Eileen has enough time to get them and posted. Those deadlines also include members of the public. If they are unable to access the internet and get files, a time for them to go reach out by phone and either look at a physical copy or get something else sent to them. But again, a timeline so that it makes sense ahead of a hearing. Our meetings are all Tuesday night, and we're saying members of the public by 10 a.m. on Friday before have to let Eileen know, I want to see the exhibits that are being shown. I want to see the stuff that's being there. So even if someone needs to phone into a meeting and they can't do Zoom, they can still fully participate, and we protect everybody's rights as a resident, as a property owner, going through there. The other thing that I wanted to make mention of, and this is kind of being put in place because of the slight mistake that happened with the applicant that was on the agenda for tonight, we are going to require that every applicant not only submit their stuff digitally, but they're going to certify that they've gone to our website, they've looked at what's posted, and they're going to make sure that what's up there is the right stuff, and they're going to have to sign a certification. It's, again, this is not a difficult thing to do, but it'll make sure that we have a system in place that puts everyone on an equal playing field. Everything is in place, and they've got to do that 15 days before the hearing. They've got to make sure that we've got no issues in terms of timing. I know this, we spent some time doing this, and I'm just like letting the board know that there is a procedure in place to make sure that we're handling as best we can under these, crazy circumstances, making sure that every member of the public has access to what they need to see so that they could fully participate in any public hearing. I just wanted, we're working on this, and to make sure that it's being done the right way. Kara, am I missing anything?
No, I think that was, a great summary. We are working on this. I think the only other thing I would say is that we're going over and above what's required in order to be conservative, make sure everybody has their due process, make sure no one feels like they're excluded in any way, and to make sure everybody's treated equally and appropriately across the board. And in some instances, providing more time than is even required by all of these various regulations. And that's the issue. We've got the laws, we've got the executive orders, we've got the DCA rules, we've got the Department of Local Governmental Services, we've got the New Jersey Administrative Code Directors regulations, so really just trying to comprehensively put everything together, give more time than is required, and make it clear and consistent across the board as to what we're looking for, and easy for the board members, for the public, and for the applicant to come in, know what they need to do, take care of it, and then we can go ahead knowing the board has jurisdiction, knowing everything's taken care of, and we can proceed accordingly comfortably.
So that's just, I mean, I wanted to give everyone that update, that's where we're at with making sure that we're doing everything we have to. The other thing I want to mention is our next meeting, which is February 23rd. Yes, we will have on the agenda Flemington Center Urban Renewal LLC. And yes, I'm going to ask Kara, have you spoken with the applicant for 91 Main? Have they talked to you about notice, or where does that stand?
Yes, I have spoken with them. We are in the process of, reviewing notice. And they did say, and we did discuss the completeness hearing, that they were going to submit their notice to me to take a look at. They have done that. So we are reviewing that as we speak.
Okay. So those both will be on the agenda for the 23rd. And we will, our standing rules is we take old business before new business, and we will have, so we will have both on the agenda. Now, I know that seems like a lot, and it is a lot. And we are going to be in communication with both applicants so they understand that that's what the agenda is. But, Eileen, was there anything else that you saw looking ahead for the 23rd?
No, not for the 23rd, but we did receive additional information from the Premier Outdoor Media. I know I've talked to Mr. Clerico, and I think he was going to talk to Kara about how to proceed with that application.
Yes, I did speak with Bob. I spoke with the applicant's attorney as well, told him that we did have two substantial applications that had already been scheduled. I said that I think, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you were going to basically prepare a updated letter based upon what they had submitted, and making recommendations to the board if that hadn't happened already. I don't want to speak for you.
I haven't gotten to it yet, but yes, that's what we discussed.
Okay, and what I had recommended to council was, since, we are getting away from doing this, sort of simultaneous completeness hearing procedure, because it's proven to be, while we were trying to be applicant friendly and move things along, it's proven to be a bit difficult. And also, since we do have some time with these two substantial applications, what I had recommended was to submit what they needed to submit, let Bob do his review letter and make his recommendations to the board. Then we could schedule this for a completeness hearing, and then at that completeness hearing, schedule it for an actual public hearing after the fact. I don't anticipate, knowing what we know so far, that the completeness hearing would take very long, because I believe for the most part, it's really just two items or one item that needs to be submitted and just documented or to do a completeness vote. But we'll know that once Bob does his letter. And again, then that way we would follow the procedure of deeming it completed a hearing and then scheduling it for a public hearing.
And you're not anticipating that coming for the 23rd though, are you? Or do you, for terms of completeness, we're thinking of one of the March meetings? You don't know.
Bob, have you gotten, or you or Eileen gotten anything else yet from them?
No, they made their submission. You and I discussed it,
Yeah.
but no, I'm not actually expecting anything from them until we respond back to them, I would think.
Okay. I thought the soil erosion application.
That's what I was gonna basically put in the letter.
Okay. So Bob and I will talk offline, but that's pretty much the procedure. And again, I have relayed to the applicant that we've got some two substantial applications that are on. So he's not anticipating it to be anytime February or first meeting in March.
Okay, that's fine, as long as we're being clear about that. Okay. I think that was what I had under for chair items.
So, hey, Jeff,
Please.
so from a date perspective, so on that 23rd meeting,
Yes.
scheduling both of those, I mean, we'll only be able to hear one. I mean, there's, but
Well,
maybe, yeah.
I don't know.
It's just, I guess there's gonna be, you taking old business first, but from a planning board perspective, that puts 91 Main ahead, correct?
Not in the order in which things were submitted.
No, okay. Then, 'cause I
Yeah,
was gonna say, I think-
and scheduled for hearings. So I think the mindset is kind of, we're going to just continue the scheduling of the hearings in that order. This was scheduled first, so now we'll move that to the next meeting and then schedule 91 Main after that.
Yeah, I was just trying to think the members of the public in participation that we're going to undoubtedly have for both applications that that were just crystal clear as far as all the folks that will be in the participant gallery, if you will.
Yes, no, and the rules that this board adopted previously about the order of our agenda and things like that, we're trying to follow all of those precisely.
Great. Okay, thank you.
And Kara is in communication with attorneys for both of these applicants, and so they both know what's going on.
Yeah, it was more for the members of the public, not the attorneys and the applicants on the board.
Yeah. But we don't anticipate either one of these being one meeting
Right.
long. They're both going to be multiple meetings. So we'll take it as they come. Okay, Eileen had circulated by email the bills. Do I have a motion to audit the bills?
So moved, Cook.
Second, Hain.
Eileen?
Mr. Cook,
Yes.
Mr. Hain,
Yes.
Mayor Driver,
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Dashna,
Yes.
Mrs. Engelhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Budney,
Yes.
Ms. Giffen,
Yes.
and Mr. Hill.
Yes.
Thank you.
Professional reports. Kara, do you have anything to add?
I don't. I think I've done enough talking tonight.
Mr. Clerico, do you have anything to add?
I do not.
Ms. McManus? Thank you. Do we need to go into executive session?
We do not,
Do I have a
or
motion?
at least not for anything I know of, unless anybody has any other issue.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Engelhardt moves to adjourn.
Budney seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. I will see you all in 2 weeks.
Good night, all.
Take care, everybody.
Night all.
Take
Good
care.
night.
Bye-bye.
Night.
Good night. Thank you.